Wouldn't it be awesome if you could invest into the crypto markets the same way how you can invest into the S&P 500 super passively, just in a low cost index fund, investing into the top performing companies. But now with crypto being hotter than ever, what about investing into the biggest, most popular and successful crypto projects and cryptocurrencies out there? Well, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about in this video. And these are cryptocurrency indices that are coming up, and already some of them starting to position themselves as the leading index for cryptocurrency. Now, quick reminder what an S&P 500 index is. These are obviously the 500 biggest companies in the US, and I'm a big believer in that and investing in those companies. But you can see here, I don't own any of those companies individually, and it'll be very hard for me to research all of them, follow them. So basically, I just dollar cost average every single week into the entire index, and my ETF provider of choice is then using that money to invest it proportionately, right? Because you see here, some of those companies have a higher weighting than some of the lower ones, and they're changing over time, right? I mean, Apple hasn't always been the most valuable company. If I go back to 1980s, we had some oil companies over there, and even Coca-Cola was in the top 10 back then. So these things constantly change, and obviously the idea is by investing into an index such as the S&P 500, you passively invest and grow your wealth over time. So of course, with regards to the crypto market, right, we all want to benefit as much as possible from the price appreciation we've seen in recent times and most likely going to continue going forward. But which of those currencies are you picking? I mean, look at all of those. I mean, these are all the available coins out there. I mean, thousands. These are just some of them being listed. Look, I'm already on the 100th coin. I can go to page 103 and still have coins. What is this? 10,201, some random coins I never heard of in my life. So many to choose from, and who's going to win? Nobody knows, right? It's really, really difficult to pick the winning cryptocurrency. I mean, here we just have 500, and honestly, I wouldn't know which of those individual companies is going to do the best in 20 years from now, right? So the idea is by having an index around cryptocurrency that you would invest into the top performing ones. And well, it looks like we are about to have more and more of these indices coming out, especially with Trump coming back into office and being much more crypto friendly. I believe we have much more progressive and positive crypto regulation coming out. So we'll have more ETFs being approved around cryptocurrency. And then obviously those will follow certain indices. Now, right now, there doesn't seem to be one golden standard like we have with stocks and companies like the S&P 500, right? Everybody knows them around the world. In fact, it's one company that issues that. It's the S&P Global. It's a stock listed company, and they just came up with this index some time ago. And obviously it seemed very popular. And obviously that's the index provider. You would then have the ETF providers such as BlackRock, State Street, or Vanguard that basically issue ETFs around that index. So it's very important to have the index first, and then those ETFs will be built afterwards. So I think as Washington becomes more crypto friendly, we'll have more ETFs being approved, and then we can build those ETFs around the leading index. So the question is, which of those indexes will be the leading one? Well, only time will tell, but I think two ones are definitely in the lead to potentially come the leading global index if you want for cryptocurrency. So the first one that just recently came out is actually from CoinMarketCap, and honestly, it's an amazing website. Again, it's mostly free of charge. I use it all the time. If I could only use one website for all my crypto knowledge and insights, it would be that website, because it's so much incredible information, all free of charge. You can go in any of the coins, you get all the latest charts, where it's being listed, you get news, you can see analyst recommendations, a lot of things that, for example, on stock related parts and insights, you would have to pay for. Here you get it free of charge, which is really, really cool. And well, most recently, actually, they came out with their own sort of index, which they call the CMC 100. CoinMarketCap 100 index. And honestly, I really thought it was such a smart idea to start leading the pack, right? Because I think it's an early mover advantage, right? This website has huge amount of traffic. You can see they're getting 14 million monthly visits to their website. So it's definitely a strong and well-known website out there. So people already feel comfortable with that name, and I think that plays an important role in becoming an industry leader, right? And you obviously see over here the performance, how it did over time, the price history, and then of course what it's made up of, because that's very important, right? It shouldn't just be the 100 top coins weighted equally, but you want to have a certain weighting and methodology behind, like we have with the S&P 500, where the 10 top companies have a much higher weighting than the bottom 10 companies, right? If they move in price, it doesn't really make a difference. If the top 10 moves, it will make a major difference to the overall performance of that index. So the same is true over here. I actually describe it really nicely what it is and how it's composed of. So as they say over here, the index is a benchmark and measured on the top 100 cryptocurrency projects by market capitalization. So that's very important. Obviously, market capitalization is the same principle as for the S&P 500 or when we measure any individual company. So the principle is the same, where you would basically take the stock price times the number of shares, right? That gives you the total market capitalization of the company. Here, in the case of cryptocurrency, it would be the price per coin times the number of coins out there, and that gives you the total market capitalization of a particular cryptocurrency. So here they would use that as a benchmark in terms of ranking, and very important, it excludes stable coins like USDT or USDC, as well as other tokens that are pegged to other cryptocurrencies, for example, WBTC and STETH. So that way they really want to focus on actual performing cryptocurrencies rather than stable coins and anything pegged to other coins, because otherwise you kind of have, double the effect of one coin just by a different modification of it. So I think it's honestly really good, and I like 100 companies. I'll come to in a second to another index that has less, but in general I like more, right? You kind of broaden the horizon. Like I wouldn't want to invest into the S&P 10, right? With 10 top companies, you could, but it is more risky. By having 100, potentially, you just diversify more. And while probably a lot of those will perform badly, quite a few of them will perform exceptionally, right? And that's how you get average return that you as an investor probably want to get without having to find the winners going forward. So yeah, right now we can see what it is basically composed of if I click into show more. So these are right now the top 100 holdings. You can see if I scroll down over here, the last one is Chills that just made the list over here. Actually a coin I remember that was quite a while ago already. Back in the days I used to trade that a little bit, but I haven't done since then. And then obviously some of the more known ones, the higher we go over here. Of course, how else could it be? Number one is Bitcoin. That hasn't changed since many years now. That alone has a market cap of almost 2 trillion. So naturally it has a much higher weighting than, for example, Ethereum, which is around only a quarter of the value of Bitcoin, right? So naturally, the price of Bitcoin dictates overall how the index is doing. In a way, once again, similar like the S&P 500, when we see any of those companies at the top here, majorly correcting or dropping in price, we'll see the entire index dropping quite a bit as well. So they do have major overproportional impact. Then, for example, if I go down over here, pick any of those companies, let's say the Cooper companies, right? If they doubled in price, as they have a weighting of only 0.04%, it really wouldn't make a difference in the grand scheme of things. And I obviously describe a bit more about the methodology over here, how it's calculated in US dollars, when, every day, etc. So it's really good to see that. They really take it very serious. You can even see the fact sheet over here if you really want to dive in to how it's composed of and so forth. And regardless of which is the winning index in the end, I think it's important to have one major global index that represents cryptocurrency, because that will make it also more mainstream, right? We see the news these days. Everybody talks about the S&P 500, Nasdaq 100, maybe Russell 2000, some of the biggest indices in the world. But for crypto, we don't have that, right? Then usually when we talk about crypto, they only say one thing, the price of Bitcoin. And that's it, right? That's all we hear about cryptocurrency. But obviously there's so much more to it. So I think it's really good to have an index that represents the overall crypto market in its current state. And here we have the second index where I can see big potential in the future to become one of the global leading index representing cryptocurrency as a whole. And that's called the Coinbase 50. They call it Coin 50 in short, basically over here. And obviously with Coinbase being the biggest cryptocurrency exchange in the US, and usually we tend to look to the US for those leading global indices, I wouldn't be surprised if Coinbase would be the winning one. And yeah, they also only recently introduced this. But as you can see, the principle is very similar. You have a weighting approach. You can see over here how different cryptocurrencies are weighted, and probably a similar approach. The higher the market cap, the higher the weighting, which does make sense, right? You don't want to have, the Dogecoin to be the same weighting as Bitcoin, right? It just wouldn't make sense, right? So obviously as Dogecoin or any other of the coins gets more valuable, sure, they should have a higher weighting. But the whole idea is that it's weighted on the total market cap of a particular coin. And obviously it seems that you can trade the index on Coinbase so far exclusively. I'm not a Coinbase user myself. If you are using it, then let me know in the comments below if you can trade it or not. It would be interesting to find out, because I think whoever becomes the winning index eventually will be tradable on pretty much most exchanges, even stockbrokers eventually, right? And here also have the index, the fact sheet, if you really wanted to dive in, how it's composed of, how it performed over the time and so forth. And it was actually a good interview that I found over here on Yahoo Finance, where the CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong actually said that in the future there will be every project, every individual, every meme coin on the internet. There will be so many coins to choose from. So ultimately, like a lot of people, myself included, they want to have a broad market exposure to crypto, right? They don't want to have to go through thousands of coin analysis to find the winner. They just want to set it, forget it, and dollar cost average into the crypto markets overall to benefit from the price increases, hopefully over time, which they have done so for many years now, without having to pick individual cryptocurrencies to invest in. And so I think that could be really attractive for a lot of people. And coming back to the CoinMarketCap 100 or CMC 100, I actually forgot to mention about here how you can invest into that. And currently right now, you can't actually physically invest in that, right? And generally, you can't really invest into an index, right? That's just the benchmark. You would then use an ETF provider to follow that benchmark. And the same, I think, will happen over here. Now, currently, obviously, there aren't too many exchanges or brokers that are listing it. If any, they are saying that we are collaborating with other exchanges and platforms and counterparties to explore the possibility of creating investable products based on that index, right? So I think it's a brand new product. The longer it will be out there, people start following it, talking about it, then obviously some of those crypto exchanges, but even more important, I believe, stockbrokers and banks will start adopting it, right? If you don't want to go through the trouble of sending your money to a crypto exchange, you can't be bothered getting a hardware wallet, then you might want to instead have crypto exposure through your stockbroker, right? Because you can already buy a Bitcoin ETF from BlackRock, for example. But what if you could buy a crypto ETF based on the CMC 100 or Coin 50, right? And then just passively invest into the crypto markets over time? I think it would be appealing to a lot of people. So naturally, a lot of the brokers would be interested to get their investors' money and start allocating towards that. Now, probably the fees will be higher than with a low-cost index fund. I currently pay 0.03% on my S&P 500 holding. So I'm sure those fees will be slightly higher in the beginning. But as we have more and more providers out there offering that, I think those fees will also come down. But generally, I think it's going to be really good to have more mainstream awareness of how the prices do. If you hear on the radio, on the TV, the CMC 100 or Coin 50 is up or down, you start to think about it more and more and hear and become more comfortable with cryptocurrency as an investable asset class in general. And then once again, it also makes it much easier for people to invest in. While I'm a big fan of owning the underlying asset, right? The same way how I buy a stock or ETF, I want to make sure it belongs to me, even though it's kept under my name with the broker. When I buy Bitcoin, I want to own my own Bitcoin. That's why I personally don't buy a Bitcoin ETF. But I understand for a lot of people, there might be tax advantages, right? For example, if you buy Bitcoin yourself, you may not have certain tax advantages that you would get with an ETF, for example, at least for time being. Maybe it will come in the future, but I believe you can't really get ISA tax advantages from it and other parts of the world where you could get these things. So if you invest into companies with a strong crypto exposure, such as MicroStrategy, it might make sense. Or for example, if you were to invest into an index, crypto index, like the ones we talked about today, you might actually get tax advantages from that. But again, it remains to be seen. But I'm really bullish and confident that this will become more and more prevalent in the future because we've already seen incredible success with the crypto ETFs. You see here the biggest ones in the world. And you can see here total assets under management are currently over $70 billion. I mean, mind-boggling numbers. So obviously there's a huge appetite for crypto-related ETFs. And obviously the ETF eventually is based on an index. Most commonly right now is the Bitcoin ETF. So it's only one basically asset in there. But as you can see, there are also different categories, right? People might want to invest into a meme coin ETF, right? That basically has all the various meme coins in there. No Bitcoin, no Ethereum. So it might be more risky, similar like the NASDAQ 100, right? Not everybody likes S&P 500, might be too boring for them. So they prefer to go more tech heavy and focus more on tech and then invest in the NASDAQ 100 ETF, for example. So same, some people might choose to have some exposure to the meme coin ETF or index in this case, right? So all these various things, game coins and what have you, political memes, so many subcategory across different crypto projects and coins out there. I think it could definitely be interesting. And eventually we're going to have indices around all those various ones. Maybe not all of them, but some of the more popular ones. So I think it's a really good thing for the crypto industry at large. Though naturally, of course, personally, I think that obviously Bitcoin, which currently has a market dominance of 54%, that will always set the tone for the crypto markets. And I don't see this changing anytime soon. So obviously, if Bitcoin is down, we usually see the other markets down as well. But then again, if Bitcoin is up, right, usually some of the other altcoins, what we call altcoins, are some of the other coins over here, they are following in price increase, sometimes even higher, but just with a delay. So in this case, you as an investor wouldn't have to time the market perfectly. You would just invest into that index through an ETF based on that index, and he will benefit from all the price appreciation in the long term. So yeah, I thought it's really interesting. I'm really happy that companies start developing those different indices. I think there's a race to who's becoming the winning one that everybody takes as the benchmark when they compare also their crypto returns. Right now, everybody compares versus Bitcoin returns, but long term, I think we want to compare our returns versus the crypto market overall. So if you generate a 100% return on your crypto investments, that's great. But if the market, right, either the CMC 100 or the Coin 50 return 150, well, then technically you underperformed, right? The same way how we measure our stock investments or ETF investments versus the S&P 500. It's kind of the generally accepted market return, right? When we talk about market return, we usually refer to the S&P 500. So if I manage to get 6% from my dividends, but the S&P returned 9%, well, in this case, I underperformed the market, which obviously is not what you want to be doing. So I'm really excited about this. I still think it's early days, but it's worthwhile to keep an eye on it. And if there was such an index and ETF to come out, which I'm pretty sure will happen very soon, once again, with Washington becoming ever more crypto friendly and US definitely wanting to take the leading role in that space, because I highly doubt that the leading crypto index around the world used by everyone will be from Germany. I'll be very surprised, or any other country for that matter. I think eventually we're going to have some kind of US version of that. So hopefully you found this video insightful. If you did, please give it a like. It helps it to be seen by more people. Next up, check out this video over here. As always, thanks a lot for watching. Stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.